Do you love being outdoors, and do you always find that your pockets are filled with neat little things that you collect as you go for hikes? Well, I've created the most beautiful series for you. We're going to talk about live terrariums and dry terrariums. My theme here is all about the forest floor, and you're going to love all the creativity and inspiration because you'll be able to create all of these yourself, and I'm really looking forward to sharing these videos with you. Hello and welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today. We are going to be discussing doing a closed terrarium. This is my first terrarium ever made, so I am going to be sharing with you all of the things that I have learned by countless visits to the nursery, as well as watching a lot of YouTube videos. So although I'm not an expert in this area, I do want to assure you that some of the things I've learned will help you as you select your plants and the location and the soil that you want to make for a closed terrarium. Now, I do have another video that is about terrariums and closed environments that do not involve any plants. And the reason I've done that is some of these objects are so gorgeous that you want to have them in your house, but you don't want any of the maintenance that comes with having plants. And if you're like me, I often do kill houseplants throughout the winter time, although I enjoy doing them. My outside garden is spectacular, and if you've been following me, you likely have seen some of the monthly garden tours I do. But this winter I wanted to bring more things inside, and my girlfriend gifted me this beautiful terrarium, and you can see with the lid on it how spectacular it truly is. So she thought it would make a great video, so I am dedicating this video to my friend Anita, and I am going to make myself a beautiful terrarium. My theme for this terrarium is a woodland setting. I'm calling it forest floor. And so I'll just take you through some of the materials that I have used for this particular project. So as you gather all the things that you want to use in your terrarium, there's a couple of things to consider. First of all, the size of your vessel. It's really important to think about how big this piece is so that you buy the right plants. Now, I'm going to spend a bit of time going through the plants, but first let's talk about some of the things that you can use. Obviously, there are gorgeous plants that you can pick up and use. You'll definitely want to spend some time in the nursery talking about the right plants. As you can see, I bought this beautiful asparagus fern, and unfortunately, it is actually too big for this piece. So wherever you buy your plants, ask what their return policy is. I'm very fortunate in the nursery that I purchased this beautiful plant from. I can return it if it's still in good condition. And if I've killed it, they have a 3-month guarantee on all of their plants that they will exchange for another one. So really ask about what that exchange rate is. And I can tell you that already I've killed 2 plants. These ones right here, I managed to kill 2 other of these ones. And I only killed them by not watering them frequently enough in the week I was getting ready to do this video. So that was really disappointing. When I went back to see if they were truly dead, if I could revive them, they told me they were dead. And they said, no worries, just go get another 2 and we'll exchange them for you. It's only been 10 days. So I was actually quite delighted with that. And of course, ended up with more plants taking home. So they're very smart, those nurseries, where they know that people that love plants will just come in and buy a few more when they come in. So really consider about where you buy your plants. So now we've just talked briefly about plants, and I will take you through what I've selected in a moment, but I wanted to just showcase some of the other things that I'm considering using as I put this beautiful closed terrarium together. And I say consider because as you put a terrarium together, you need to keep flexibility in mind, because some of the things that you thought would work may not work, just like the asparagus fern. And you may find that some of the pieces that you've gathered are either the wrong scale, or that it's just too crowded for them, or that you don't like them. So I am first starting off with this beautiful piece of birch bark that I'm going to be using in the container. Now let's just take the lid off. I've already tested this out to see how it's going to look. So it is going to rest, and I want the thicker part towards the bottom because that's more how nature goes. And I want this to sit like this. And as you can see, if I've placed it properly, I've got this really nice little arch that comes up like that. And I will be able to nest interesting little plants, such as a couple of really pretty little air plants sitting on that. And I may choose to not do that as I go through, but I think that's all part of the fun of doing one of these things. It allows you to be very creative as you move forward. So I have that beautiful piece of birch bark, and I foraged that. I have another piece of bark that's off of a tree from outside, and a little stick. So these are just little pieces that you can use and gather for your arrangements. Now I also have some really pretty little acorns. I've actually gathered up this really cute little jar full over the years, and they're all dry. You want to make sure that there's no bugs in anything that you're doing. So it's a good idea to try to collect things, put them in jars, and then your bugs will die over time. I also have these really pretty little mini acorn pine cones. I believe they're from a hemlock. I will have to check that. But I collect them because they're just the prettiest little pine cones, and I have a whole jar. Some of them are on sticks, and I figured from a forest floor perspective, they would just be lovely to find down on the forest floor. I also have some really pretty rocks, and I've used a whole bag of these in another arrangement. So I have some left over, and I'm probably going to layer the bottom of this vessel with them. I have my black rocks that I used in that same beautiful Zen garden. I probably won't use these, but I have them available so that as I go along, I have some choices I can make. I also have some more kind of flooring gravel that I will put right at the bottom to help with my drainage. This is something that no one will see, so I just want to make sure I've got some good drainage. Some of the other things that I wanted to take you through that I've gathered as well for this beautiful terrarium are rocks. So over here I have a bowl of rocks. I keep bowls of rocks in my home because there's so many beautiful shapes and figures and colors. So I like to keep bowls of rocks, and sometimes I use those rocks in some of my arrangements. This particular one has some beautiful pink marble. It has some rose quartz, and it even has other ones that I purchased as well. Over here on this side, what I have are some beautiful rocks. These are all amethysts, and I went to a mine this summer up by Thunder Bay, which is on the northern shore of Lake Superior. And there's some beautiful mines there that you can go in and gather your own. So I've gone through my collection. To give you an idea, I bought a bucket about this big for $31. So there's some bigger ones and there's smaller ones. And I've gone in and I have selected some of the beautiful rocks here that I thought might look fabulous in this arrangement. And you can see from a scale perspective, they could look really, really nice here. Just to show you one thing here, this is an open terrarium that I created, and I've put some of the bigger sort of gem-like crystals along the front of those same amethysts. So it was a really good time for me to look at all of these rocks and think about how I could use them in the future. Now, the other things that I have on the side, I have some sand. I use this sand for another project, the beautiful Zen garden that I've also used those stones from. I bought all of the sand and the stones from a pet store. And the reason I did that is I wanted to think about all of the different materials that I'm using in my yard and in the house. And I wanted to think about my own ecological footprint. And I wanted to be able to put some of these things back out into the yard afterwards and know that I'm not causing any harm. So I made sure that anything that I purchased could have a lizard on it or anything like that. I did look at some cheaper solutions that you might find at a dollar store. However, they were coated in strange paints, and I just didn't feel comfortable about my ecological footprint using that type of sand. So I've picked all natural ones to make sure that I am doing the best I can to leave the world a better place. Now, just before I get into the plants themselves, I thought I'd talk about a couple of cuttings that I did from the yard. I went out and I picked or cut off some of this beautiful plant. It's also known as Wandering Jew, and I'll put the formal name as well in front of it because I really don't like calling it that, but that is what it's been commonly known as. These little plants, they have a purple underleaf and they are so gorgeous. They also root extremely well, so I really do love that part of it. Now, the girl at the nursery told me I might be able to see if they would dry root themselves. So I tried one just sitting around by these rocks. It has some little tiny air roots and it's also starting to bloom. So I think what I'll do is probably use these ones. They're just a lot healthier and they have some really nice new growth on them. The other thing I've got is some beautiful sheet moss. So this moss I purchased from the nursery. They've just been harvested. They're in plastic bags when I purchased them, but they are, I think they will be okay for this. And the reason I say that is they couldn't guarantee that they were 100% live and that I could get them to come back. Now I've put this in water and it's beautiful and it's greened up and it's doing really, really well. You do not want to buy the moss that's in the closed bags because those have been dried and also sprayed with preservatives and often color. And if you put them in a closed terrarium, they will mold up and you don't want to lose all the beautiful plants that you've purchased by having your moss destroy everything. By the way, I also asked about beautiful Spanish moss here. This is the one, looks like this. And unfortunately, that one will also mold up. So you don't want to use that one. So if you can't find live sheet moss, just avoid putting in any moss at all because you don't want to damage the beautiful plants that you've invested in. Now let's talk about the plants that I've actually chosen for this beautiful terrarium. I've already mentioned that the asparagus fern is too tall. I would have loved to use it. They did have a smaller version of it. However, I have chosen these other plants. So let me just take you through some of the beautiful ones that are available and that you need to think about as you are choosing your own plants. So first of all, the one thing I did discuss with the girl at the nursery was how close my entire vessel was going to be to the window. And the reason she was asking me about that was the closer you are to a natural source of light, the more vibrant colors you can use. So many of the houseplants have some beautiful, stunning arrays of colors with like whites and beautiful pink and all different other colors. And the closer you are to a window, the more flexibility you have in your houseplant choices. Now, my arrangement is going to sit at about 6 feet away from a window. So please think about where you want to put your vessel before you go and buy your plants, because that makes a big difference in the plant selection. So here's what I have chosen. So these are beautiful little plants. I love these guys. Every year I look at them and think about buying them. They are lemon cypress. They usually come out at Christmas time. They just came out with this beautiful small size. So you can see that's going to fit very nicely in here. These are the ones that I killed and have replaced now. They are called club moss. And you can see they sort of look like little cedar trees. And that's when I was thinking of the forest floor theme. That's why I purchased them. I also wanted little plants, and this one is called false aurelia. This one over here, I just picked this one up yesterday when I returned the other ones. This is called silver table fern. And the reason that we chose this one is because this one gets these little frogs that come up and they sort of will spike up really nice, which will go really nice with this birch bark stick that I am putting in here. I picked up a couple of more mossy pieces that go right along the floor. And this is called baby tears. It's so pretty. It's very, very delicate. This one here is called gold club moss. And you can see how it just started cascading outside of this plant. It too suffered a little bit when I didn't water these as quickly as they needed to be watered. but it has revived back quite nicely, so there was no need for me to return it. I also think I may be able to divide this one to use in a couple of spots here in the actual plant. And then I picked this one up yesterday too. I just thought it was cute. I believe it's called Lemon Button or Lemon Bottom. Such a delicate little fern. I did look at the maidenhead fern because it's so delicate. The nursery gave me some insights into some of the plants that would be harder for me to kill. And they said that the maidenhead fern needs a lot of water, a lot of delicacies, a lot of attention. And I just decided that that was a plant that I might kill, and I didn't want to bring it home, even though it was beautiful. This one here is called Nerve Plant, and it actually can be divided into several different plants. So I'm going to try to tuck this in. I'm taking a total risk with this one because I'm going to be, as I said, like 6 to 7 feet from the window. But at the low cost that this one was at $5.99, and the fact that I can divide it, I'm going to try it in a couple of spots and see how we go. I also have some air plants that I purchased. They were $3.99 each. And when I was in the store, one of the things I was asking about was how I could do this in an economical perspective. I wanted to be under $50 and have since spent more than that. So you could say that this project is like $100 project by the time you buy your soil, you buy your plants. If you already have a container, that's great, but that will add to your cost as well. And that's why picking up all of these little pieces over time can be very beneficial. So you're not going out to buy the rocks or buy these new little cuttings. So things like this that you can keep in your home for when you want to make one of these things can really reduce the cost. So let's start building this right now. Okay, so as we assemble this, I wanted to just talk to you about a few things. First of all, this is a closed terrarium. So everything in here, you need to be very mindful about how you're putting your items in it. You want to try to keep the sides as clean as possible as you go. And you want to not have your plants touching the actual sides because that's where they're going to get too much moisture and they could rot quicker. Now, if they touch, it's not the end of the world. You can come and trim, but that was some of the guidance that was given to me. Now, I've just put in a layer of rocks here. I could have done it on the film for you, but it was extremely loud, so you are welcome. I didn't do that. And the first thing I've done is I've put a nice layer here. I've watched a number of YouTube videos, and some people say you should do it. Some people say you should not. Some people say you should add charcoal. Some people say you don't need to. I've watched a couple of ones that also were guys that have an entire living on selling these terrariums, and they just start with dirt. Now, I've still started with a layer of gravel just because I think aesthetically it looks really good, and that's really what it comes down to. Then I'm going to use a coffee filter, and I'm going to place that down here. And the reason I'm going to do that is just to try to keep some of the dirt from the bottom of this vessel. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about choosing soil and how much you're going to need in advance. When you are putting together all of these terrariums, anything that you can do ahead of time can really help you out as you're dealing with all the small plants. One of the things that I had to really consider was how much soil am I going to be needing for this project? I have lots of bags of soil in the house from different projects, and I was advised to use a mixture of cactus soil as well as seedling and sprouts soil. So I'll mix that together with also a little bit of sand, but I wanted to know that I had enough before I started the project so that I didn't have to run out and get some more. So what I have done is I have used some measuring cups with water to try to figure out exactly how much soil I'm going to need to prepare in that bucket. When I used these, I thought 8 cups would be ample. So I used my 8-cup measuring cup, filled it up, and it really only filled about halfway. And I'm using the plant to the left to be an indicator of how deep I need my soil. So I used another 4 cups and it still wasn't enough, and then another 4 cups. So in total, I'm going to need to make 16 cups of soil. By doing it right now, it allows you to minimize the amount of dirt that's going to get over the sides of your terrarium as you're making the soil, and it allows you to do all the pre-mixing ahead of time. So all of these little tips can really help you speed up the process, because the part that's the most enjoyable is putting the plants together, but all of these little steps do take a fair bit of time. I don't think it really matters which way you have that sitting. The idea is that you want to be able to put your soil into the container. Now, I'm going to start with trying to put this close as I can to that filter. Here at the beginning. And again, I'm trying to not make a mess of the walls as I go. And as we mentioned, we have 16 cups of this soil. Now, you see how I have it mounded up here right now? One of the things I wanted to do was to come around with some of my decorative stones here, and I just wanted to make a couple of spots where you see a bunch of them. It doesn't mean it's going to be around the whole thing, but it allows you to get a little bit of visuals now and then. See how loud that is? Sorry about that. By doing it this way, you actually cut down on some of the costs, and you use your soil, and this will be just a pretty little layer that's decorative versus the stone at the bottom, which is more of a drainage approach. Now you can see I still lost some of the beautiful stonework, but there's still going to be enough there as it goes along to look pretty. I'm going to add in just a little bit more soil, but again, using these plants as the amount of dirt that I'm going to need, I'm going to need to do that. But before I go too much further, I do need to make sure that I have this birch bark piece in there. So I'm just going to try to dig a hole for it right now, and I wish I'd remembered to do this before. So you'll definitely want to test any large pieces like this in advance. I did test this, but it's also sometimes hard to remember sort of the exact way it was sitting. So this is the way I had tested it, and the testing that you want to do is to make sure that your lid fits on. It's okay that it's actually higher than the top of the vessel. The lid on this one is just going to move it up a little bit, which will give more room for the plants to grow, and it won't disturb it enough that things are going to actually alter as they sit there. So this is how I want it to sit. And I'm just going to put a little bit more dirt in it, and then I think around the bottom of this, just to make it a little more secure, I'm going to add some of my pretty rocks. Plus, I've also kind of messed up the way that those pretty stones looked a second ago. Okay, so I'm going to place a couple of these really pretty rocks right there. I'm going to just make sure that that's level. I've had a couple of preliminary layouts of this. What I've done is I've taken all of the plants while they were still in their containers, and I sort of had an idea of where I might want to place each one. And I think that's a good idea because it's a lot easier to sort of play around with heights while it's still in the pot. So with this one, I thought, oh, the little fern at the big front would look really pretty. And these higher ones the ones that have more height, they will go at the back here. So I am just gonna try to play here. I'll keep the camera going. Let's see how this goes. I'm actually really looking forward to this. So I'm gonna start with some of the plants that are gonna sit underneath this piece here, because I think I'm gonna have to. Now, just a little tip as you go, I have pre-watered all of these plants. They really do dry out quickly and my soil is dry, so I wanted to make sure that they were as vibrant as possible. So I'm going to put that one in the back. Now, you can see I've actually made a bit of a mess here on the walls. So what you're going to want to do is keep a little spray bottle with you and just get that off as quick as you can so that you're not leaving a trail of dirt behind you. Actually, what I was thinking is right in front of this one is I'm going to put another piece of amethyst, balance out that other piece, make it look more interesting down here. So when I'm building something like this, I always like to think of what's the front piece? What's the piece that people are going to see? When you're building any arrangement, particularly one like this, people are going to be able to see this one from all angles. So it's a good idea to just sort of turn it around and see what it looks like. I'm going to test the top here. You can see that it still works, even though I put all of those rocks in the front there. The funny thing about amethyst is that when they're wet, they're far more beautiful. So I'm hoping, as this container sits here, that the dampness from the environment will actually make them a little bit more shiny. Okay, so let me just turn that your way so you can see it. Look how pretty that's looking right there. Now I can see I have a couple of gaps back here. So we're going to try this one right here. We're going to take this one right here and we're going to see if we can divide it. So you can see how, now that I've taken the soil off this one, it doesn't have a deep root system. And I didn't want all that extra soil in there. I'm going to see if this one I can divide easily, which I can. And remember, my theme is forest floor. I'm also, as I go, thinking of the contrast. How are the different pieces working together? So because I have this beautiful stick in here, I need to think about what's sitting underneath it. So I have just a little bit of this baby's tears left. I'm gonna tuck that underneath. And then I think I'm either going to use one of these two colorful plants also sticking underneath there, just for a little color contrast. Let me see. I don't want to overdo it, so I think I'll just use one. This one's got a nice root system on it. And we're not sure if it's going to survive, so I don't want to overdo it. So we'll just put one in there. Pretty. Wow. And then we'll put a couple more of these purple plants. I think I'm going to save that for a different arrangement somewhere in my house. Put a couple more rocks on the other side so that depending on where you're sitting, you get the beauty of the rocks. Okay. So now the next layer is other little things that you would find on the forest floor. So that's where I'm going to take these pretty little small pine cone twigs and I'm just going to tuck them in there too. I'm actually going to put them more on top of things like those baby tears. So it sort of looks like they fell. I'll throw a couple of these pine cones in there, or sorry, the acorns. I'm going to group them in threes because the eye likes to see things in groups of three. They don't have to be touching, but you want to be able to see that there's three of them in that area. And I don't know if I'll actually end up using any of these other little pieces. Might use just this one little piece of wood back here. And then there's just a couple of spots that I'm just going to put a little bit of my living moss into these cracks. So let me just clean up and then I'll take you through what it looks like in the end. Okay, so I had it pretty much all done and thought I'll just clean up the sides and take you through the final look. And I saw the sand that I had taken out and I was thoughtful and went, oh, it looks so pretty with just a little layer of sand around the edges. Now, if you're going to add sand, take it from me, make sure that your sides are totally dry because they will stick to the sides. So the way that you clean your sides is you use a spray bottle and you just keep spraying until there's enough water that it starts to push things down. The sand does stick and it makes it way more complicated. So it's a design element if you want to add it for that extra little finishing touch, but know that it will take you probably another half hour of getting sand off of plants, getting sand off the wall, getting sand off the stones. So it does add an element, but it is a little more complicated. So what I did was I just used a spoon to try to get things as close as possible to the edges of the container. I didn't do a total layer across the entire container. I just did it around the edges so that it looked more as from a design perspective, what everything was going to look like. So let me just finish cleaning off the sides here so that everything runs down smoothly, and then I'll take you through what the final piece looks like. I'm absolutely delighted. I just can't believe how beautiful it is. Let me just take you through what the terrarium looks like. I've tried to put up some black cardboard in front so that you get less of the glare. So I do apologize for any of the glare, but let me just show you all of the different beautiful elements of this terrarium. First off, I'm calling this part the front. This is where you see those 3 beautiful, lovely purple pieces of amethyst that I mined up north. And they are just really, they set it off. There's a beautiful fern that sits in the front here. There's those little tiny pine cones and some acorns as well. As I spin it around the side here, you can see there's a nice piece of sand and there's a little piece of wood that looks kind of like a log just sitting there. And it's just so lovely. It's such a nice contrast as you look at the greenery, and then there's a piece of dead wood. Over at this side of the arrangement, I've tucked in all sorts of plants in the underside of that birch tree, or that birch stick. There's some beautiful moss at the back. There's also 3 more pieces of amethyst. There are some more acorns and some more of those little pine cones. I just love the way that this has all come together. I've also avoided using any more sand in this area. The reason I did that, I just wanted a different type of look at the back here that just sort of drew your eye in. The sand sort of draws your eye to the side, and in this particular one, I wanted your eye to go more towards the back, towards where the rocks are. On this side here, you see there's more pine cones. I love the way that like nice little pine or cypress looks there. It's so lovely. And then in the front, again, it's just so, so nice. Now, I wanted to show you as well what it looks like once I put the lid on this. So I'm just going to turn it to the side so you can see how much of this birch branch moves. So you can see not much of this whole arrangement was disturbed by putting that lid on, which is great. The other thing you can see is once the actual lid goes on, those little pine cones or the little seed pods, they actually now really show up on the side here, and it looks just so pretty. It also gives a little bit more space for the underside of the whole arrangement. So I'm just loving the way that this looks. From an overall viewpoint, looking at the forest floor, it's just lovely. And when you take that lid off, it smells like a beautiful greenhouse. So it's such a welcoming thing to add to your home here in these winter months. So now that you've created your beautiful terrarium, how are you going to care for it? Well, I have a couple of tips for you. First off, from a watering perspective, you do want to make sure that your plants are getting enough moisture, but not too much. So one of the things that you can do is to use a turkey baster with just a wee little bit of water to get around the plants themselves. Or you can use a syringe to get way down at the bottom, but you definitely want to make sure that this is getting water. How do you tell if you've watered too much though? Well, what I was informed is that there's really a couple of indicators. First off, because it is a nice little closed room in here, it's going to give off a little bit of moisture and you'll probably get a little bit of foggy glass. Don't be alarmed, that's actually a good sign. If your glass, however, becomes foggy and has like water droplets beating down, you have way too much moisture in there. So just lay off on the moisture, take the lid off, and let it sort of dry out a little bit. Now, the other thing when you actually are thinking about your closed environment here is that you'll probably need to take the lid off, not only for moisture, but also to allow air to circulate in here. You want to make sure that your plants have a chance to breathe. Even though plants produce oxygen, they need carbon to actually produce that oxygen. Carbon is produced by things rotting. There's likely not enough things in the terrarium that you've created that are going to actually rot quick enough to sustain the life of your plants. It is possible, but at the greenhouse, the nursery, I was informed that it's probably a better idea to just, for the longevity of my plants, to take that lid off and just allow it to air. So maybe once a week you take that lid off for a half day, That'll help with the actual moisture, and it will help as well with the air circulation. Now, finally, you want to make sure that you don't put this whole container in front of a bright window that has direct sunlight. Direct sunlight will act like a heat lamp on it, and it will also make the glass act like a magnifying glass, and will get so hot in here that your plants will burn, and we don't want our plants to burn. So it is a little bit of a wait and see when it comes to the terrarium, to see how much of this is going to live and how much might just not make it. And I think that's part of the fun of dealing with plants, is we try things, we see how things go, and we just love watching them grow beyond our wildest dreams. So I'm really excited for this container. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got lots more videos coming your way over the winter time. You guys are giving me so many great ideas for things to try out and explore. Thanks so much for following along, and I, as usual, always love every one of you beautiful, kind comments that you leave. And if you have other comments about how you have made a terrarium last long, share it with the community, because everybody grows together. That is one thing I love about this garden community. Everybody is the kindest, most generous souls that just want everybody else to succeed and have beautiful spaces. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time. Hello, friends. It is now 2022. I created that video 3 years ago in 2019, and I wanted to give you a quick little update of how that terrarium is now doing. So here is where it sits in my home, right beside the Christmas tree during Christmas. And it is still doing extremely well. Occasionally it sits on the dining room table where I had originally intended it to be, which is closer to the window. Now this is about 15 feet from the window, and you can see it's not getting a lot of light at all, and that would be fine for December. And then I'll move it back into the light when it comes more towards this part of the year.